Hi, my name is Diane. I'm the owner of Street Art Museum Tours. I'm doing a short video on Vincent van Gogh, 5 things to know to impress your friends. Please write your comments in the down below. I would really appreciate it. So the background for Vincent van Gogh is that he really did make a profound mark on the art world. His work definitely lives far beyond his lifetime and sits in many museums and galleries around the globe. When his art goes up for auction today, it continues to bring in the top dollar amount. And even today, people look at his work today and they're influenced. He had a brother that he was extremely close to. His brother Theo supported him throughout his lifetime because his art was not appreciated. He did get some commissions, but it simply wasn't enough to put food on the table and pay rent. The artist was a loner, and he spent vast amounts of time outdoors by himself. He was also profoundly opinionated and struggled with an incurable mental illness that kept him in and out of asylums for his entire life and led to his depression and suicide in 1890. Point number one, Vincent van Gogh had early careers before he became an artist. At the age of 16, he worked briefly at his uncle's art dealership in Paris. And from then on, he detested all art dealers for his entire life. He worked in several careers, such as a bookseller. Then he decided to become a theology student, and he studied theology very briefly before he went into training for an evangelist. He was told that he would be assigned a congregation after he finished his training, but he wasn't assigned, and he waited 3 months and decided to go into missionary work. During his time as a missionary, he worked among the impoverished population of the Borinage, which is a coal mining region in southwestern Belgium. He created a scandal, point number two, by giving away all of his worldly possessions while working as a missionary. When he gave all of his possessions, he got in trouble with the cardinals, who thought that he was taking the biblical teachings too literal, and they felt that he was on the verge of martyrdom, and this was frowned upon in the missionary community. So he was kicked out, and this really made him very depressed and sad. He was very hurt that he got kicked out and couldn't understand why. His artistic career, point number three, lasted only 10 years, from 1880 to 1889. And he was only 37 years old when he died, which limited the scope of his career. At the time of his death, though, he produced over 2,100 works of art, about 1,300 drawings, and over 850 paintings. While in school, Vincent van Gogh learned many artistic techniques from both artists that he met and his teachers. He would experiment with different techniques, and he involved his style in color palettes. His rapid achievements were rooted in his frantic and constant production of work. He sketched, he drew, he painted, and he studied nonstop, as he believed he must paint with an emotional moment, and he had to do it quickly, and he had to soak everything up very fast and practice it very quickly. All this feverish artistic production was interrupted by his frequent battles with mental illness, loneliness, and poverty, which would take him away from his art. But Van Gogh's legacy stands in stark contrast to other artists who spend decades perfecting their craft and produce only half of the amount of work that he did. So point number 4, the first 4 years of his art career, he was a student, and mostly he did drawings and watercolor. He did, like I said earlier in the last slide, he did master artistic techniques rapidly. And even though he's most famous for his oil paintings, primarily his early work are drawings and watercolor paintings, which he was able to do outside. And here is a great example of one of his drawings. So it wasn't until the summer of 1882 that Van Gogh began experimenting with oil paints. So he made 3 types of art. He made still life, landscapes, and portraits. And this slide right here is an example of what he could do when he was ill and in an asylum. He only had access to the courtyard. And so he did play with color, paint application, and brush strokes throughout his careers. Vincent van Gogh, he painted many flower arrangements as still life subjects. He experimented with color and light and new techniques that he learned from several different artists and teachers. So with these floral paintings, he used the flowers because he knew that if he made a painting that was too radical, they wouldn't tell him that they didn't like it and that they weren't going to pay him. They mark a distinct shift from the darker, muted paintings created influenced by the classical art of the Netherlands to the brighter, more colorful work of the Impressionisms in Paris. When he created landscapes, he created abstract paintings. And this is an example of a Saspos painting that he created. It was made very popular by the Impressionists and the Barbizon school. They would go out into the forested areas to paint scenes of the woods up close rather than perching outside of them in surrounding fields. So Spos paintings rarely had skylines or horizons. They might have like a little crack of blue, but they were characterized by detailed grassy areas and forested floors. He made several paintings of the undergrowth landscape, which expanded and diversified his work. These paintings are considered modern abstract art. The composition is tight and focuses in on only a few trees and the wooded ground. He utilized varying shades of greens and yellows to convey a sense of light and vegetation that speckles through the trees overhead. Van Gogh's signature fluid brushstrokes contributed to the realism in these works. These paintings captured experiences and called attention to entirely different aspects of the natural world. He loved the farm life. He focused on those that worked the land, their hardships, and the countryside that they cultivated. This love of painting the countryside persisted from his earliest works to his final paintings. He had a fondness not only for landscapes, but the agricultural tradition and the people who worked the fields and sowed the land. Depictions of rural life and farming were not uncommon in 19th century Europe, but Van Gogh had a deep connection to country life and wrote extensively about his love of nature to his brother Theo. He was deeply inspired by the work of his contemporary Jean-Francois Millet. He spent significant amount of time translating and reinterpreting many of Millet's works depicting peasants working the land. Though he copied the compositions exactly of Millet's work, he infused these paintings with movement, color, and a vitality that were all his own. And portraits were a really big thing with Vincent van Gogh. And throughout his 10 years as a painter, he worked within the realm of portraiture. His approach to painting portraits was grounded in conveying emotion and character instead of attempting the realism or photographic accuracy that people were doing at that time. He's also famous for his work with self-portraiture, and he created more than 43 self-portraits in his lifetime. The self-portraits were done as a series of studies during introspective periods of self-isolation, which were fairly frequent when he became sick or ill, or he went into an asylum. His self-portraits were intended to mark significant periods of his life. Each set of self-portraits contains a wide array of physiognomic representation of his mental and physical condition throughout these critical junctions of his life and career. In some, he appears unkempt, starved, with a weak jaw and lost teeth. In others, he seems visibly healthy with a more serene expression, more robust coloring, and sharpened features. A prime example of the bond between the self-portraiture studies and his mental and physical health is the addition of the bandage to his head after he mutilated his ear. Interesting, he rarely depicted himself as a painter, and the complexities of his self-portrait paintings weren't a separate lengthy article. So thank you for watching. Please join us on our Facebook page called I Love Art Tours. And Vincent van Gogh pops up in several of our virtual tours of the National Gallery of Art, Washington, D.C. Hope to see you soon.